Lhota has to get past John Catsimatidis, and that may be a challenge. You know, many of those trips that you read about President Clinton when he goes to Africa, well, they are on Catsimatidis' private 727 jet. Not Lhota, it's Catsimatidis. He owns supermarkets, real estates. You get the picture, Andrew, where I'm going with this. Catsimatidis has a lot of money, and he says he's willing to spend that money in the last days of this campaign.
And he's got enough to spend to make up for that fundraising difference that Lhota's got.
Oh, it's not even close. Yeah. It's not even close. Catsimatidis, huge advantage. Money's in his side.
I mean, John is on the record. The Wall Street Journal had a story this weekend that he's going to spend another $4 million from the last filing that he had at that point. Joe's got $1.5 million. I think. If you look at the dollars, at the end of the day, I think I've said this before to other people. This is Joe's race to win, or Joe's race to lose rather, and John's race to win.
I'd agree with that.
If Joe does everything he's supposed to do from a candidate standpoint, there's 70,000 Republican voters that are going to decide on this. Every piece of mail that Joe sends out goes to 90,000 people, because out of the 90 get the 70. Every piece of mail that John goes out to 486,000 Republicans in New York City. He mails all Republicans. Joe just mails prime Republicans. If the turnout is 100,000 people or greater, then it swings over to Catsimatidis. But right now, it's 70,000 voters. That's where Joe's focusing his money, his mail, and his phones, and his TV.
And that's the exact strategy that you want to have, is you want to go after the voters who are likely to vote in the primary. If you don't go after, if you expand your universe, you take a risk in not getting those voters out. So that's the target. Especially when you're short on funds, go after the voters you know who voted.
It's funny in a primary too. You look at the scheduling too. And in Joe's case, Joe's got to spend time calling people for money. But if they go to subway stops, I saw Joe tweeting he was going to a subway stop yesterday. That's fine for the press and the media. But out of those hands you're going to shake, how many are registered Republicans that are actually going to show up to vote? When you go to street fairs as a Republican, the same thing. I equated it the other day to a Republican petition gathering. Elliot Spitzer stood on the corner and collected 27,000 signatures, literally on the corners across the city. A Republican goes door to door to get those signatures. A Republican knows where they are, where the Republican votes are, and that's what they focus on. That's what Joe's got to do to win.
It's really about the ground game. You're going to have a strong ground game. You have to make personal contact with these Republican voters. That's the key.
Okay, I want to get off the strategy for just 1 second, but stop and frisk. Obviously, it's
stop, question, and frisk, and Joe's very careful about saying that.
Yeah, but I think a lot more people call it stop and frisk than call it stop, question, and frisk. Obviously, it's helpful in the Republican primary. Can a Republican win the general election embracing stop and frisk, especially without changing it that much from the system the judge basically found unconstitutional?
I think absolutely. I think that if you make it part of an overall strategy, if you say stop, question, and frisk is part of an overall strategy that will help keep this city safe. And I think that's what's missing from the conversation that Bloomberg and Ray Kelly are having. They're making it seem like stop and frisk is the only thing keeping the city safe, and that bodies will rain from the heavens if stop and frisk goes away. It is one of the strategies that keep this city safe, and it should be in place, but it needs to be modified.
And when Joe talks about it, he says stop, question, and frisk, Dominic. I don't know if
he does.
He says it's always what he says. But what he's also doing, he's not leading with it. And the thing you have to remember about a little bit of strategy here, don't forget, the Democrats will have a runoff. The Republicans, 99% chance there will not be a runoff. So the Democrats can't go after Joe Lhota until after October 1st, when they have no money left, possibly, and they're tired. They have 1 month to go after Joe if he wins the primary. How many things can they go after him on in 4 weeks?
I want to ask Dominic the same question. Can a Republican who embraces stop and frisk, or stop, question, and frisk, or stop and ask politely and frisk, can they actually win the mayoral race?
In this election, no. But I do agree with the points that have been made. The Democrats are going to have a runoff. They are going to kill each other in a runoff. It's going to get nasty. It's going to get brutal. They're going to have to go after each other. And we may, I don't think it'll go this far, we may have a repeat. Remember, for all of Bloomberg's money, the only reason why he was the mayor of New York City is Fernando Ferrer and Mark Green killed each other in that runoff. Thus, Bloomberg walked right on in. So Opie is correct in terms of the timetable. You're fighting for your life if you're a Democrat, and then there's only going to be a month until the general election.
Dominic, this runoff's 1 week later because the problems of the Board of Elections, don't forget. They extended a week later for the runoff.
What about Bloomberg? I mean, if Bloomberg is putting all of his eggs on his legacy about stop and frisk, and he certainly seems to have doubled down on it in the reaction to the judge's ruling, does he get involved in this race? Does he start spending some of his money to try to protect his legacy on the issue?
I don't think anybody wants a donation from Bloomberg.
Really?
If you want to win, you stay away from
I think
Bloomberg.
it opens up too much controversy. Why do that at this point in time? The other thing we have to talk about is whether a Republican candidate will and basically follow the lead or endorse the appeals process for the current judge. I also think that is a pitfall and a trap. There shouldn't be any Republican candidate shouldn't talk about I will support the appeal process.
Point.
My question is,
that's something that shouldn't play.
what does Lhota do with Giuliani? We know that he's taken him to Republican areas so far, but in the general election, the way that Bloomberg went around with Giuliani, is Lhota going to do the same?
Well,
that's the question.
We asked the Bloomberg question here. I think the short answer is in the primary, you don't want Bloomberg with anybody. In the general, I think things turn, especially if it's Joe, because if he has Bloomberg and Rudy with him, he has an opportunity for the following message. You have a choice. We can look forward and build on Rudy and Bloomberg, or you can look back and go back to the days of yesteryear where New York was unsafe, which then ties in stop and frisk, where New York couldn't pay.
Isn't that going to energize the minority vote? Hey, there's that mayor that bought the third term. We're going to turn out and vote against this
and
guy.
did he just say he wants to look forward and not back?
Well, that's he looks forward and he says that I want to build on what we're doing. But you're building on that base. But when you talk with the minority community, what happens to Thompson if he's not in the general? Does the minority voters you're talking about, the non-white voters, do they get annoyed at the process and saying, hey, we had Thompson last time?
It depends on if de Blasio destroys. If the runoff is de Blasio Thompson, it depends on how nasty it gets.
Right.
Because again, if they destroy Thompson in a runoff, minorities will say we're sitting on our hands. We're not going to turn out.
All right, we're going to take a quick break on RFL. We're going to continue with the race for City Hall after the commercial. The battle of the Bills heated up when Bill Thompson called on Bill de Blasio to pull his latest ad. We're going to explain why right after the break.